There's obviously a lot of issues about this well, allegedly expanded action in and around Iraq against ISIS. And I say allegedly. I'll get to that in a moment. But we have multiple questions here. Um, Put aside for a moment the strategy. What is clearly problematic, regardless of what the analysis is for the strategy, is, in my mind, the Obama administration's reliance on the authorization of use of military force. In other words, he is again following down the Bush path of expanding the what becomes the baseline in terms of presidential authority to wage war. This is very problematic. We overshot the authorization in Libya, and then this is the next step where they don't even feel that they need to get authorization to do what they purport to be them to be doing. And that legal question gets a little bit weedy. But by all accounts, the only thing that I've seen that could justify this, at least on an international level, would be Article 51 from the UN Charter, which basically says that a country can defend itself and can ask another country to help it defend itself. Iraq, the nation of Iraq, is clearly under threat from ISIS, but beyond that, there's no authority from an American perspective. But we can circle back to that. I want to get your sense. There is another theory in terms of reaction to what President Obama said on Wednesday night, which I think Dan Frumkin has been pushing, Professor Juan Cole has been pushing, some others, which is that essentially President Obama went out there and used that speech to quell the warlust that was building in Congress, and that in fact he's not going to do anything more than maintain a defensive posture. That really the strategy is containment of ISIS as opposed to attempting to decimate it, because he knows that you can't decimate ISIS. But what you can do is continue to protect Erbil. You can continue to protect Baghdad. Which means, protecting the Mosul Dam. It doesn't necessarily mean trying to go after Mosul. I mean, because all of those other things, it seems to me, taking back land in Iraq, being able to successfully bomb in Syria, these are all farcical. You're not going to be able to do that. It's just not possible. All you're going to do is create more recruits for ISIS, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, let me sort of, I think there's a couple of things here. First, to comment on what you started off with in this segment, I have a really big problem with that. And that's what sort of, once again, brings the lie to all these supposed constitutionalists on the right, your Rand Pauls and people like that who claim to care so deeply about the Constitution when they happen to agree with it, or when they've, bastardized what it says for their own purposes, like the Second Amendment. But then when it comes to this, I mean, it's quite clear the founders did not even want us to have a standing army, a permanent standing army, which we do have now. They understood its danger. And I think we've seen that they were right on that one, and so the fact of a president making the unilateral decision, any president, to put we started on that slippery slope with Korea, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. I mean, we've fought in so many wars, and we haven't declared war in about 70 years. And this just should not be acceptable behavior. It shouldn't be allowed. This is still a democracy. That's my first problem with all this. Second, what Juan Cole is saying and others, I've read some of that, and that may be true because it seems to me, certainly in Iraq, I don't know what we're doing differently than we're doing right now from what President Obama said. It seems like it's the same thing. So maybe I missed something. I don't know. But so that's fine. The thing in Syria that concerns me, when we're talking about arming Syrian rebels, which is something I think we've already done some of, but not a lot of. It's hard to know what we're already doing and what we're not already doing, and what we're being told and what we're not being told. But I just don't know when when the light goes on and the stupidity of any of that kind of stuff. When that is realized, either these people, all of them, from the neocons to other people that want to get involved in doing anything like that, are either the stupidest people alive, which is possible, or they just, or they've got great investments in arms companies. Because the truth of the matter is that we're fighting a group right now of ISIS who have our arms, arms that we've given to them. We've probably fought with
I think I saw a report that said there has been a direct link between arms that ISIS has and arms that members of the more moderate supposed of the rebellion in Syria that Saudis gave them in 2013.
Right.
They've actually literally found serial numbers that so they can show this. So.
Yeah, right. And of course we're still friendly with Saudi Arabia for the clear and obvious reasons. They behead people. Their Wahhabism is sort of their radical Islam, if not exactly the same as what ISIS is doing, is certainly at least 3/4 of the way there. Is certainly something that
and according to Congress people and people who have seen 28 pages that were not released from the 9/11 Commission report, it is quite clear that it was official governmental policy of the Saudis to fund the 9/11 terrorists. That's
right. Well, they fund these guys.
That's going to be an issue that's going to come up more, I think, in the near future. Right. Frankly.
Well, they fund these guys to sort of and they arm these guys to kind of to sow all sorts of chaos in some of the countries that are their rivals, right? And to try to stop some of the proxy forces for Shia countries there to fight their battles in Lebanon. Yes. Whatever. So we're giving them arms and money, and they're just passing it on to people like ISIS, or we're giving it to the Iraqi government, and they're just passing it on to some of the Shia militias out there, who, by the way, are also beheading people, and some of the pro-Assad forces, who, by the way, are also beheading people. It just reminds me again of this 9/11 crap. Like, they're terrible people. He's gassing his own people. They're beheading people. Yes, they're vicious, terrible people, and whatever swift punishment comes to them, I would be more than happy for that to happen. However, for us to get involved, to give weaponry to people that could be on the other side tomorrow, could be joining a different Ba'athist militia, could be forming an even more radical group, as ISIS became a radical outgrowth of Al-Qaeda. How many times do we have to see the same movie from Afghanistan, where we saw it in the past? Give them all the weaponry and training against the Saudis. Oops. Against the Russians. Oops, that's going to come back and bite us in the ass. And, it happens again and again, and I'm sorry, but I can't believe they're that dumb. So there's just got to be some other agenda there, whether it's corrupt, dishonest, whatever it is, because you just know, how long ago was it since the last time McCain declared we should be fighting a war against Syria? Now we're arming them. Look at what happened in Libya, which is, to me, the worst foreign policy mistake that Obama's made so far. You got guys who took over our diplomatic compound there, swimming in the pool and enjoying life. The militias, by the way, that we supported, that are now going around killing people in Libya. It never works, ever. All right? You need to actually have a group of people who are trustworthy and who are fighting for something that is right and are not going to just sell out to the other side the moment it becomes the place to go. And how often do you have that? And that is the issue here. All this stuff just gets tiresome. It's our tax money going to put more arms in a region, and they're inevitably going to end up in the hands of people that John McCain's gone over and taken selfies with and posted on Twitter about what wonderful people they are, or having a great night drinking in the tent with Gaddafi, but then like a year later you want to bomb them. It actually might be a good way to know who we're going to bomb next, is that John McCain's broken bread with them. It's just, there's just the Middle East is what it is. It's changing coalitions, and some of the most radical Sunni regimes are the ones who we consider our allies there, who are arming these guys. It's a fucking mess, pardon my French. And, why are we still doing this? It's incomprehensible.
There is, on some level, maybe it's always been there, but there is, it does seem more extreme than it did, the efforts, it does seem more extreme than it did maybe 25, 30 years ago, but maybe not. That the reflexive response of let's drop bombs, man, let's just do this, just seems, and maybe I'm just more conscious of it. I don't know. It just seems to be.
No, I don't think we did this. It was a big deal, if you remember, when Reagan bombed Libya, after the Pan Am flight.
Right.
That was a big deal back then, such that I remember it. I remember when the news was, I think I was about 13 years old or so, and I remember it coming out on the news that had happened. All right. I don't, the bombings we've done since then, they're,
right. We've dropped more bombs probably this past week, in probably multiple countries. We drop bombs.
Right. To me, there's two
missiles,
scenarios.
Whatever it is.
Right. We do this stuff all, and to me, there's two scenarios, as I've said in the past, where we should be, that I believe are worthy of getting involved in terms of dropping bombs on people. One is to protect a group of people that are good and honest and innocent, the only group of people you can trust almost, which are civilians who happen to be in a village somewhere and somebody is headed to commit mass genocide because they happen to be Tutsi or something of that sort, and because they're different. That, to me, is justifiable to protect a group of people. The second one is if there's a march on the American embassy or somewhere like that, we need to defend our people. Those are the only two times that, to me, it is valid to get in militarily and do something. Otherwise, stay the hell out. And that's the thing. That's my problem here, is that you put your little toe, you dip your toe in the water, and then we get a little deeper in, and a little deeper in. Before we know it, we'll be arming people that in 5 or 10 years from now, or frankly 5 or 10 months from now, will have turned against us because somebody paid them more money, or because they found a new form of religion, or who the hell knows what. But the coalitions there are never permanent. They're always switching, and we don't know what the hell side we're on. We've been on every side of that sort of Sunni-Shia divide going back to, when we were supporting Iraq in the 1980s versus Iran in the Iraq-Iran war, but then we were secretly arming Iran from good old Ronald Reagan. We've been on every side of that thing, and it's at some point it just gets to be ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think the value of a sort of a defensive posture in Iraq is simply that ultimately, I mean, it seems quite clear to me that ISIS is going to overreach, and that the one thing that can fuel their success going forward is if they are seen as fighting on behalf of the Sunni against American aggression. And that's why I think this is really a case at the end of the day about efficacy. This simply cannot work, and I hope that guys like Frumkin and Juan Cole are correct, that are correct in saying that he's actually playing. And Dan Frumkin is not someone who is going to credit President Obama with this type of stuff easily. I mean, he's
an honest journalist,
pretty skeptical guy. But if it is the case that this was more about sort of just satiating Americans' feelings that they got to go around and we got to just bomb the hell out of them.
Well, and also because the Tea Party and those guys are stirring this crap up on the right, about calling him weak. And yes, if that's why we did this, and frankly, the president should get up and explain to us in what he's doing in foreign policy anyhow, because we have the right to know. It's our tax
that
dollars
explanation was about as vague as you could get in many respects. Words like rollback, and we may go into Syria, and we can, and there was a lot of like, we're a terrific country, and it certainly, I think, placated some on the right to a certain extent. I think even Boehner had to come out and say, well, the speech was good, but now we got to see the action. And maybe that's also a clue that he is also convinced that basically President Obama just went out there, gave a speech, not going to do anything. Well,
if that's the case, and we're just going to do similar to what we're doing now, which, again, I don't know everything we're doing because I don't think we're being told. But if that is protecting certain people like the Yazidis and others who are ethnic minorities that will be slaughtered, if I could know that for sure, I believe I'm in favor of that.
I
think that is
interviewed a
one
guy
time.
yesterday for just a couple of minutes, and we're gonna actually interview him again on Monday because we couldn't finish the conversation. But according to his reporting, about 70% of what we're doing, what we have done in Iraq, was basically in and around the Mosul Dam. And my understanding is that if ISIS gained control of the Mosul Dam, and at one point they did have it, and apparently the Iraqis took it back, that they could literally destroy Baghdad by blowing up this dam.
Okay, well that makes sense, and that's, to me, still falls under the rubric of protecting innocent people, and so I can potentially get behind that depending upon the individual details of what it is we're doing. It's this sort of, to me, where everything stops. And again, I'd like to think I'm not naive. Unless it's a clear situation where there is one side that is quite good and the other side that's quite evil, which in George W. Bush's world may happen 100% of the time. In my world, I believe that happens maybe 5% of the time, if that. Then one could maybe convince me to arm one group against another group of people. But when everybody's bad, as we should have learned from when we first armed Diem and the South Vietnamese, that should have been an easy enough lesson that we keep forgetting. That when you're arming corrupt people that don't have the support of their own people, who are leading a coalition that could switch the next day, and everything that goes with that, it never works. It just doesn't. It leads to more violence. It leads to our weapons getting in the wrong hands and everything that comes along with that. Hatred for us in the region and the rest. And that's my problem here, is that I don't fully trust what they're doing.